Hi, Professor Nick Gularos and class. Today I want to talk about the four leadership theories that we've been studying this module. They are contingency leadership, continuum theory, path goal leadership theory, and leadership substitutes theory. So the first one is contingency leadership theory developed by Fred Fielder. In 1951, he matched leadership style to the job or task at hand. So he believed people's styles are unique to them and that they shouldn't be changed. It's easier to adjust to the task than it is to change your leadership style. The basic application of this theory is to establish whether your dominant leadership theory is task-oriented or relationship-oriented. And the next step is to determine situational favorableness by looking at three variables. So the one variable was the leader-follower relationship. Is it good or poor? Do you get along well with your employees or not? Second is the actual structure of the task. Is it a repetitive task or a non-repetitive task? And the third is what the position of power that you hold. Is it strong or you have a weak power base compared with regards to your employees? So once you establish these three variables where you fit for the task, you then follow the flow chart and you have 8 different outcomes from highly favorable to very unfavorable. And so obviously you want to choose this if you have a highly favorable outcome. So what happens if you have a very unfavorable outcome? Well, Fielder suggested that you can actually change the situation to improve your outcomes to be more highly favorable. And the way that you do this is to affect the three variables. So in other words, your leader-follower relationship, you can work to improve your relationship with your employees so that becomes more favorable. And the same thing with your position of power. You can work on that to make that more favorable as well. So that's contingency leadership theory. The next one is the continuum theory. That was by Tannenbaum and Schmidt in the 1950s, and it's another contingency theory. The continuum leadership goes from boss-centered at one end to subordinate-centered at the other end. So there are 7 major leadership styles, and there are 3 variables that affect the 7 leadership styles. So first of all, the 7 leadership styles, from the most autocratic, state the decision that is not open to discussion. The next one is make the decision and convince employees that it's a good idea. The third one is to present the decision, ask if there are any questions, so you can see that there's just a little bit more input going into it. The middle one is present a decision that is subject to change based on input. In other words, I've made the decision as a boss, but I want you employees to talk about it, and I could change my mind or I could make some adjustments to it. Then the other side of the continuum is more employee participation. The next one is state the situation, ask for recommended decision, and then make the decision. Next is let the employees make a decision within set limits. And then the last one is let employees make ongoing decisions without really any input from the boss. So again, you can see a continuum from the boss making every decision to the employees making all the decisions. Like I said, there are 3 variables that affect that. The one is the boss himself. What kind of boss is it? What kind of personality and behavior, leadership behavior that they prefer. Obviously, there's some bosses that we all had that want to make all the decisions, and some are more flexible. Same thing with subordinates. There are some employee groups that don't want to make decisions. They want the boss to do it, and there's other ones that want input. And then there's also the situation, especially time. There are times when you don't want to have a big discussion if the time is of the essence. Sometimes you do, as a boss, have to make the decision. So that's one of the variables too. So that's the continuum theory. Third one is the path goal leadership theory. This is Robert House, based on M.G. Evans' theory, published in 1971. The leader chooses the appropriate leadership style to motivate employees to perform better. The path goal leadership model is used to select the appropriate leadership style. And you also look at the situational factors that are involved in this. The subordinate, whether it's authoritarianism, locus of control and ability, and then you look at the environment as well. The task structure, how repetitive is the job, the form of authority, the extent of the leader's position power, and the work group. You use the situational factors to choose one of the 4 leadership styles. So the 4 leadership styles are directive, supportive, participative, and achievement-oriented. And then once the correct leadership style is selected as a result of the situational factors that you factor in, obviously, then the result is high performance satisfaction for the employees. The last one is the leadership substitutes theory, and that is Stephen Kerr and John Jeremias. They state, at times no leadership is necessary. Self-managed teams are used, and a substitute for leadership is the case where you have highly skilled workers who don't need leadership. There are times when you have groups that are highly skilled or that work well together, and they just don't need the input of the boss. So there are neutralizers that reduce or limit the leader's effectiveness as well. And the variables that substitute or neutralize leadership. So depends on the characteristics of the followers, their ability and knowledge, like I said, the characteristics of the task, is it going to be routine or not, and the characteristics of the organization, is it flexible, inflexible, things like that. So those are the 4 leadership theories. The last part of it was to choose one that I would use. And in my situation, being if I was principal of the school, I would want to use the continuum theory. I think it is the best one to use. Again, I think in most decisions, I think you would want to be on the continuum more towards letting the employees make the decision. Giving them input into it. I think that leads to buy-in. But this theory is flexible enough where if you are with a group of employees that, for instance, don't want to make a decision, then you can make it for them and be more authoritarian. Also with time, sometimes there are tasks that the decision has to be made right away, and you just can't logistically have input from everyone. And so I think this theory is the most flexible depending on what the variables are. So thank you very much for listening, and I hope you have a great day. And I'm sorry about my Dobermans out there. Thanks.